I so wanted my father to come hear me, but my father never visited me. Do you know how many conversations I had with my father over a lifetime? Maybe 5. One day, I was in my nursery playing with my toy soldiers, when to my great surprise and delight, the door opened and father came in. After a while, he said, "Winston, would you like to be a soldier?" "Oh, yes, Papa." I thought he discovered in me some semblance of military genius. After all, what else could a descendant of the great Duke of Marlborough say? A boy of my upbringing had only 4 choices of career: the land, the law, the church, or the military. And as I later heard my father say to my mother, "Well, Jenny, the boy has no land. He's too stupid for the law. He's too obstreperous for the clergy." So, it was the military for me. I was walking hand in hand with a Miss Clementine Hosier on the grounds of Blenheim Palace. Our first meeting, I took note of her personal grace and beauty. Our second meeting convinced me that here was a woman of great character and intelligence, and I fell in love almost instantly. We'd had a short courtship, it may be 9 months. A sudden rainstorm forced us to take shelter, and there I asked for her hand in a gazebo, in a rainstorm, to an audience of 1. It must have been my greatest speech. She said yes. We wrote her mother for her hand, and upon her approval, we were married September 12th, 1908, and we lived happily ever after. I call her Pussycat. She calls me Pig or Pug. Sometimes I'll come home and I'll shout, "Oink, oink!" And she'll reply, "Meow, meow," if she feels like it. One time during the war, we were on all 4s under the dinner table with our adult children, all of us oink, oinking and meowing, when suddenly in walked the Archbishop of Canterbury. He was somewhat surprised. I had 2 ideas to shorten the war. One was a design for a land ship. We had to put a stop to our boys getting hung up in the barbed wire and facing the dreaded machine gun fire in the trenches. My general staff called the idea Winston's Folly. Today, it is known as the tank, and it greatly reduced casualties, helped to end trench warfare. But if my first idea was a triumph, the second was a tragedy. The Dardanelles. I thought that Turkey, Germany's ally, could be knocked out of the war quickly. At my instigation, the British Navy steamed up the Dardanelles Straits and began their usual job of bombardment. But Lord Kitchener held the army back until it was a case of too little, too late. The Germans had already moved to bolster the Turks. They reinforced the heights, and our boys were slaughtered on the Gallipoli Peninsula. When I was a boy, my parents allowed me to go to Barnum's Circus. Now there was a collection of freaks and monstrosities, one of which I earnestly desired to see. My parents hesitated. They thought it would be too revolting, too demoralizing for my youthful eye. It was called the Boneless Wonder. Well, after 50 years, I've often thought what such a thing might be. Well, now I know, because I'm surrounded by them here in this chamber. Ladies and gentlemen, the Boneless Wonders. I was not popular on either side of the house. I called Lady Astor and her friends appeasers. And appeaser is one who feeds the crocodile, hoping it will feed on him last. Tick-tock. Eh? Well, one day after dinner, over coffee, after considerable disagreement on the right course for the country, Lady Astor said heatedly to me, straight as an arrow, "Winston, if you were my husband, I'd put poison in your coffee." I said, "Nancy, if I were your husband, I'd damn well drink it." But the policy of the British government continued to be the crocodile policy. I sometimes think democracy is the worst form of government, except for every other form that's ever been tried. And then, in 1938, came the cruel, unresisted dismemberment of Czechoslovakia. And to a hero's welcome, one of its naive architects, Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain, returned from Munich, hat in hand, and proclaimed that we had achieved peace in our time. I said, "Mr. Prime Minister, you had the choice between dishonor and war. You have chosen dishonor. You will get war." At Union Station, I met President Truman aboard the presidential train that was to take us to Fulton. The first thing he did was to show me the presidential seal that he had just redesigned. He explained that the seal goes everywhere the president goes, that it is to be displayed on every lectern. He said, "I have redesigned it so that the eagle, instead of facing the arrows, he now faces the olive branches. What do you think?" Well, I said, "Mr. President, I would prefer the eagle's neck to be on a swivel, so that he might face the arrows or the olive branches as the occasion might demand." Well, I believe I put the president aback just a bit. He finally said, "Well, how about some whiskey?" And I thought that a capital idea. Then they brought out a bottle of old Grandad, and I said, No, that's not whiskey, that's bourbon." And I pulled the string at Silver Spring, Maryland, and lo and behold, a case of Johnny Walker Black Label was brought to the rescue. I've often taken more out of alcohol than alcohol's taken out of me, you know. I had my first dram of whiskey as a young lieutenant in South Africa. The local water was unfit to drink, so we had to have whiskey to make it safe. And through diligent effort, I learned to like it. Cheers. We shall fight on to the end. We shall fight in France. We shall fight on the seas and oceans. We shall fight with growing confidence and growing strength in the air. We shall defend our island, whatever the cost may be. We shall fight on the beaches. We shall fight on the landing grounds. We shall fight in the fields and in the streets. We shall fight in the hills. We shall never surrender.